bienvenidas.
Bienvenidas, comadres, compadres, and friends to our June 2021 teleconference. This is Karen Gonzalez, Book Club Coordinator for the Denver Las Comadres Book Club. We wish you and your familias health, safety, and love. We continue to pray for all affected by the pandemic and those missing in the building collapse in Miami. Our June 2021 teleconference celebrates two of our compadre authors, John Lantigua and Juan Felipe Herrera. We will learn a little bit more about them in a few. First, a bit of history about our book club. Our first book club gathering was in July 2004 in New York at Comadre Maria Ferrar's apartment. After a hiatus, it was restarted in March 2007. Comadre Johanna Castillo, at that time national organizer of the book club and former Comadres board member, said, "We are launching the book club to promote the work of Latino authors to every book lover, to bring our community to bookstores, and to support our writers. Now more than ever, we need to support our Latino authors. We encourage you to join our local book club in your city or time zone. We have clubs in 12 cities that are meeting virtually. There is sure to be one that can fit your schedule. If your city doesn't have one, why not help us start one? For more information about our book club, visit our website at latinolit.com. We started these teleconferences reading with Las Comadres in October of 2006. We are in our 14th year of sharing works by Latino authors with all of you. We created the Reading with Las Comadres teleconferences and book club in an effort to entice everyone to read more Latino authors, to learn about Latino roots and different perspectives on Latino cultures and heritage. Our book club and teleconferences are open to all, not just Latinos. We are creating a space for everyone to explore the Latino writer's mind and soul as portrayed through the written word. So please invite others to join us. We are very grateful to the publishers, Arte Publico Press and City Lights Books, for their support of this teleconference with free books. For more information about the authors and publishers, visit our website at latinolit.com. Our Book of the Month author, John Lantigua, will be interviewed by Julia Abrantes. Let's learn a little bit about John. John Lantigua is an award-winning journalist and novelist. His novels include On Hallowed Ground, The Lady from Buenos Aires, The Ultimate Havana, Player's Vendetta, Twister, and Burn Season. His first novel, Heat Lightning, was a finalist for the Edgar Award's Best First Novel. He is the recipient of numerous awards for his journalistic writings, including 2 Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Awards and the Pulitzer Prize for Investigative Reporting. He lives and works in South Florida. Our interviewer, Julia Abrantes, is the submissions coordinator for the Las Comadres and Friends Book Club, board member of Empowering Latino Futures, and a stalwart of Las Comadres for over 12 years. Comadre Julia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you to all of you who have dialed in for our teleconference this evening. John, compadre, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for everyone who's dialed in.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, for those who are listening in this evening, why don't you tell our readers a little bit about the book without giving too much away?
It's called Remember My Face. I covered immigration for my last newspaper, the Palm Beach Post, for 12 and a half years, and I spent a lot of time not only in all over Florida, but I did spend a lot of time on farms in Florida talking to migrant workers. And this book is about a man who has come to the United States to make a living, to help support his family back in Mexico, and who seems to be doing well. He's been made a foreman in the farm where he works in South Florida. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to move around anymore. He is thinking of bringing his family. He's always sent money home. Very responsible person, and all of a sudden he disappears. He has some family in Miami. They go looking for him. They can't find him. It's assumed that he just left and migrated someplace else and just abandoned his family. and his family refuses to believe that, so they hire a private detective to try and find him, and that's Willie Cuesta, and that is my series character. He's a former policeman in Miami, and so Willie, who's more used to operating in Miami Beach, ends up in farm country, and it's farm country where white supremacy and militias have taken root. So it's not friendly territory.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's amazing because when I think of Florida, I never think of farmland, but of course we know there's crops grown all over. So this was really interesting to read it, to read a book from this perspective.
Yeah, well, Florida is a large producer, obviously, of fruit,
right.
But also vegetables and sugarcane. We have U.S. Sugar is based in Florida, the company, and Florida Crystals, which is the large company started by a Cuban family when they left Cuba, is also based here. So, Florida has a very, very substantial agricultural economy. It's the second largest, the second largest industry in Florida after tourism.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
It was, definitely a big deal, and it was eye-opening for me to, to learn a little bit more. But I find that with, every book, if an author can teach me something, it's a great book,
Yeah. Well, this is something, as I said, I learned a lot about farm workers. I mean, not only did I work in Florida, but I was smuggled across the Arizona desert, and I was smuggled across the country as part of my job covering immigration.
Wow.
So I got to know quite a bit about
the migrant experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our readers, one of the first things that struck our readers was the cover art, where you have the cane growing and, the person is obviously buried underground there. How did you come up with that art?
Well, I didn't come up with it. What happened was there was an original piece of cover art that I didn't like, and I found a painting by Diego Herrera that I thought would work, but of course my publisher tried to get the rights to it, but it's just too expensive. So this is has the same theme as that painting by Herrera.
Ah, okay. And in the book, you talk about Remember My Face, of course, which is the title, and
right.
How, there was a photo, and in the back of it, that's what was written. Is this something that you have found, through your time in the migrant experience, was something that many people had, these little bits of pieces? Like I've seen and read stories where they came just with one little piece of paper with an address to go to somewhere in Chicago, and that's it. That's all they come with. Is this something that you have found is part of the experience, that they come with these little bits and pieces to remember or to find people?
Yeah, well, people bring photos of their families. They're going to be away for a long time. It used to be that, migrant workers would go back and forth every year, but it has become so much more expensive to get smuggled into the country and so much more dangerous that they don't do that anymore. So, it's, if you're leaving home, you're probably taking, photographs of your parents and your siblings and your loved ones. And so, people carry photos from home. The inscription on the back of this is something that that I put on the back of that photo. I'm not saying I actually saw that on the back of someone's photo, but but it's pretty much the message, right? Between loved ones, so that you don't forget me.
Right, of course.
So,
of course.
Yeah.
And so I mean, you've told us that you were a journalist and you lived the being smuggled into the country. You actually went through that experience. Were there other experiences in this book that you pulled from real life, whether your own or stories that you may have covered over the years?
In this book, well, I mean, all the time I spent in farm country is in this book. The times I spent in worker camps where the workers lived, the trailer, there's a trailer described in there that's exactly like the trailers I used to go into to interview people. I was never shot at in farm country. Willie Cuesta, my hero, is shot at, but
right.
Yeah, I know it largely what you're getting is in the detail. My experience of farm country is reflected in the detail of the description of the way people live. Like, watching, there's a description of people picking tomatoes and how quickly their hands moved. I remember interviewing some ladies. They were both Mexican and Central American ladies, and they picked cherry tomatoes. And they were extremely good at picking cherry tomatoes because their hands moved really quickly. They were smaller hands, and they made more money than the men because they could pick more efficiently. Yeah, and so I mean, I've in casinos there are as many women dealers as men, if not more, and that's because they can handle the cards better, And so the agricultural growers figured out the same thing, that there are jobs on farms that women are better at than men.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we loved Willie Cuesta. We wonder if we will see him in any of your future works, or is this it for Willie?
Well, Willie said this is the fifth Willie novel. The last five have all been Willie books. Now, Arte Publico has done the last three. They and I now own the rights to the first two. They were published by Signet, and they want to reissue them. As a matter of fact, right now I am reading one of my own novels that I wrote 21 years ago.
Wow.
And so that I'm going through it so that I can, pick out any things that need changing so that Arte Publico can publish it, I think next year. There's another one that's called, that one that's called Paris Vendetta is about the Pedro Pan kids. Do you know who the Pedro Pan kids were?
A little bit, but enlighten our readers about it.
Yeah, the Pedro Pan kids were kids smuggled out of Cuba right after Fidel Castro took power, and smuggled out of Cuba by their parents because they were afraid that as Cuba was going further left, that their kids might be sent off to the Soviet Union to study, or they might be put into communes. And so with the help of the Catholic Church and some Western governments, 14,000 kids were smuggled out of Cuba, and they lived in foster homes and orphanages until a deal was cut some years later to allow their parents to come out. And this is a book. The book Players Vendetta is about a kid whose parents never came out. They were murdered in Havana before they could come, and he's trying to find out who murdered his parents. And then there's another book called The Ultimate Havana, which is also was published by Signet, which Arte Publico wants to bring out, and that has to do with cigar counterfeiting, the counterfeiting of very expensive Cuban cigars. So, but the last, and then you've got the three that Arte Publico has done, and they are the Lady from Buenos Aires, On Hallowed Ground, And both of those won the International Latino Book Award for Mystery.
Ah.
And then Remember My Face, which is the new one, which we've already talked about. And I'm almost done with another one.
Wonderful, wonderful. So now we know that from the time an author writes his book to the time it's published, some years have passed. Sometimes, 4 or 5 years. Sometimes it's, a turnaround of a year. When you look back on the events that happen in Remember My Face, and you look at current events, was anything like surprising to you? I mean, we know that many of these things have been happening, but in the background. But was, when you look at the current events that have happened and what has happened in the book, was anything surprising to you, like that it came around again?
No, I mean, I because I started that book actually several years ago, but I didn't hand it in until last year, and it got published last year. So all that I think has happened is that white supremacy and militias have become much more prevalently in the news and much more of a worry to people. So in a way, it didn't surprise me because I was thinking about these themes even before, let's say, the January 6th attack on the Capitol, or any of what we've seen over the last few years. So I wouldn't say it surprised me. I think maybe that I'm in a way I'm lucky because this book is a little bit more timely now than it would have been a few years ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know I enjoyed the book, and I look forward to reading the older books to learn a little bit more about Willie, because I love a good mystery, and I really enjoyed learning about him. So I look forward to learning more about his past.
Yeah, well, he's a former cop. You learn, I guess it's in Remember My Face that you learn about, what forced him off the police force. He had a couple of cases where men had harmed children, and he loses it, and he almost kills a couple of these guys. And this comes early in the book, so I'm not giving anything away. This is his backstory. He's finally, he's convinced by his mentor that he better get out of police work and go into private work where he can pick and choose his cases. So, but he knows the city well, and that's something that I worked for almost 5 years for the Miami Herald. That was one of my jobs, and I was a general assignment reporter in the city. And the whole idea was that I wanted to really learn the city before I wrote novels about it, and I did, because I was in some other part of the city almost every day for 5 years. So I feel comfortable writing about Miami and South Florida. In fact, I feel comfortable about writing about the whole state. So,
wonderful.
And that comes from my journalistic experience of being all over this state of Florida.
Yeah, really. It came through in the book. It definitely came through in the book. And let's see. So one of our readers did ask, have you been approached about the series featuring Willie becoming a TV series or even movies, a series of movies?
Well, okay. Players Vendetta, which was the first Willie book, has been optioned a couple of times, but was never made into a movie. The Lady from Buenos Aires, which is the third book in the series, is under option right now. Although the option is about to expire, but we'll see what happens there. And I'm hoping somebody will take an interest in this last book, Remember My Face. I think it probably has the most cinematic ending of any of the books I've written.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I mean it's. again, I don't want to give much away, but that ending comes from a phone call I received late one night from a couple of migrant workers who were telling me about some friends of theirs. The whole book comes from this. Migrant workers calling me to tell me of a couple of friends of theirs who had gone missing.
Wow.
And it's when I started to think about how easy it is for these folks. I mean, they're migrants. They often work. Very frequently work under false names if they're undocumented.
Correct.
They assume a name and they get false documents under a name that's not their name. And then they're moving from place to place all the time, often in, parts of the world that aren't particularly friendly to immigrants. So,
right.
And so it's a sort of you hear it a couple of different times in the book, how easy it is for somebody like this to disappear. And how much you have to worry what might have happened to them. So, but yeah, Willie's there. Willie's, it's there'll be some new editions of the first two books coming out, and then the other ones are out there, so you can find them.
Absolutely.
But just for background, the lady from Buenos Aires has to do with the dirty war in Argentina. I don't know if you need. Shall I talk a little bit about the dirty war in Argentina?
Sure. We got a couple minutes.
Okay. The lady from Buenos Aires is about a woman. The lady from Buenos Aires has come from Buenos Aires to Miami because years before, during the Argentine military government, the Argentine military would go out and look for people who opposed the military government, and they would capture them and they would torture them and often kill them. If they captured a woman and she was pregnant, they allowed the woman to give birth. Then they killed the woman and gave the baby away to a family that was sympathetic to the military government.
Right.
And these are known as the children of the disappeared because the mothers were disappeared. And this woman who comes to Miami has been told that her niece, because it was her sister who was killed, is in Miami. Somebody has seen her on the street and said she's a spitting image of your late sister. And she comes and she hires Willie to help her try and find this girl and find out if she is in fact her niece, and to find out who killed her sister. So, and on hallowed ground, which takes part largely in Key Biscayne in Miami, there are quite a few Colombians who live in Key Biscayne, and it's because Key Biscayne is at the end of a long causeway. It's like a 7-mile causeway across Biscayne Bay. And so lots of Colombians live there because it's hard to get in and out of Colombia. If the cops, in and out of Key Biscayne, because the cops can easily cut off the causeway. So Colombians feel safer there. But this is about a kidnapping that hits a wealthy Colombian family, and Willie is called in to help them with that. So. I've written about Cuba, I've written about Argentina, I've written about El Salvador, I've written about Nicaragua. If you go back before the Willie books.
Yes. Well, our readers really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed meeting Willie, and I look forward to reading the other books in the series. Like I said, just to flesh him out a little bit more. And we really would, if this does, whether this book or any of your other books go to screen, small or large, please be sure and let us know.
Sure. Yeah, no, hopefully. I mean, the fellow who has the lady from Buenos Aires under option, would like to become a series, not to the lady from Buenos Aires, but go on and do other books. But we'll see. He's working at it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time tonight, John.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay. Comadre Karen?
Yes, our additional conversations with author is Juan Felipe Herrera. Let's learn a little bit about Juan Felipe. Juan Felipe Herrera is the 21st Poet Laureate of the United States, 2015 and 2016, and is the first Latino to hold the position. From 2012 to 2014, Herrera served as California State Poet Laureate. Herrera's many collections of poetry include Every Day We Get More Illegal, Notes of the Assemblage, Senegal Taxi, Half of the World in Light, New and Selected Poems, a recipient of the PEN Beyond Margins Award and the National Book Critics Circle Award, and 187 Reasons Mexicanos Can't Cross the Border, Undocumented 1971 to 2007. He is also the author of Crash Boom Love, a novel in verse, which received the Americas Award. His books of prose for children include Escape Fate, Calling the Doves, which won the Ezra Jack Keats Award, Upside Down Boy, which was adapted into a musical for young audiences in New York City, and Cinnamon Girl, Letters Found Inside a Cereal Box. His book, Jabberwalking, a children's book focused on turning your wonder at the world around you into weird, wild, incandescent poetry, came out in 2018. Herrera is also a performance artist and activist on behalf of migrant and indigenous communities and at-risk youth. Our interviewer is Carlos Andres Gomez. Carlos Andres is the author of the memoir Man Up, Reimagining Modern Manhood, as well as multi-award-winning collection of poetry, Fractures. His work has been featured in numerous publications, including New England Review, Beloit Poetry Journal, and BuzzFeed Reader. Compadre Carlos Andres, take it away.
Gracias, Karen, Julia, all of Las Comadres and the listeners. I am so honored to be in conversation tonight with Juan Felipe Herrera. Gracias, John. So wonderful to hear your interview with Julia. Juan Felipe, just to start and to kind of set the table here, I wanted to ask you about the journey of this most recent book in particular, your magnificent book, Every Day We Get More Legal. I've only, authored a very short list of books, but I feel like each one was like its own child. That's the way I usually describe it. Each has its own personality. The process, challenges, triumphs are completely distinct for each one. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how did the journey for this collection compare to the many different books you've written, actually, not just in poetry, but in other genres, particularly in light of you coming off of just being named U.S. Poet Laureate?
Well, that's a good question. And once again, Carlos, thanks for these questions, and thanks to the whole team, Las Comadres. And thanks to all the listeners and to John that was just on. He said so many true things and that I really related to. The journey, well, you're right. Every moment of our lives is new. Every split second is a new reality. So imagine 2 years of split seconds. When I got to this book, by the time I got to this book, I decided I wanted to really reach out and reach in and relate and offer something that felt like I cared. I wanted to feel that. I wanted that feeling to come through, that I cared about the people, and that I cared about those that were reading this book, as opposed to staying in my own self-caring. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to do that, and I also wanted to change the style of writing, the style of speaking, kind of very direct style. I'm talking to the reader. I'm talking through the book. I'm hoping I'm doing that, and I'm talking to the thing, the item, the artichoke-shaped figure called America. America. What is that? So I wanted to just like a letter in a way. It's like a loud letter or a floating letter or a letter that just springs out of nowhere. That's what I wanted to do. So the language was different, and the pieces changed as I moved around, moved along.
Wow, yeah, I definitely sense that there was such a heat and an urgency that persists across all of the poems across the book. I feel like every time I read it, I would sit down to read, and I would read the entire book in one sitting, which is very rare. And I was noticing it too. I actually noticed that with poetry books, I don't know if you do this, I typically bounce around a lot. Like I very rarely read it in order. And I read this book in order. I read it in order every time. It felt like this was the arc I was meant to travel, which I really appreciated, and it felt very cohesive in that way. I wanted to ask you about the opening poem of the book, America, We Talk About It, which feels like such a striking doorway into the rest of the collection for me. I noticed that it's the only poem in this book that follows conventional punctuation rules, though it's disrupted and subverted through the em dashes, which I love. I love my em dashes. But there are 11 periods within poems in the entire book. 11, I counted them. And all of them are contained in this 10-line poem, which seems to claim a kind of reversal of assimilation, a reclamation, a repossession, as you say in the poem, of that true inner self. The poems across the arc of the book seem to increasingly flout punctuation and subvert formal expectations. Perhaps, and most notably maybe in that last section in poem, Come With Me, where you utilize so much white space that heightens the dramatic pitch and the weight of each word you use. So firstly, I just wanted to nerd out on the rigor of your craft for a moment. I just appreciate that, and I celebrate that. And also, as somebody who often writes in sentences with punctuation, and is the son of a linguist, I always marvel at people, at any poets and writers who are able to not use punctuation and do it really well and have it really serve the work. But secondly, I wanted to ask you, what is the relationship between your rejection of traditional notions of punctuation and form and the themes your work is wrestling with in this particular book?
That's a cool question. You know, periods and dashes and commas and all those goodies, they weigh a lot. You know, it's like carrying a railroad track. You know, piece of a railroad track.
Yeah.
Or a hammer. You know, you're carrying around hammers and rails and kind of melted ingots. You know, like a comma, like a melted ingot, and the dashes are like rails. And then the periods are just like hammers. Like a period is it weighs a lot of it's a lot of weight. So once you put a period in there, it's going to stop you. It's going to stop you, and then you have to start again. And then you have to be careful where you put them. You know, not too careful, because if you start getting too careful, it turns into some kind of project. You know, like the period. You know, grammar becomes a project. And it takes over, you know, the melody. It takes over the vision. It takes over the heat, like you said. It takes over the flow. And once you start, this period doesn't go there. This period should be over there, and then you're slipping into darkness. Then you're slipping. You know, you're leaving the poem. You're leaving it. You're abandoning that in a way. So you have to flow. You know, you have to flow. And if those the caesura, the punctuations, and all those things, if they come easy to you in the poem, then go ahead. But you're right. I didn't even notice I had done so much on that first poem, because then I started moving, and I started abandoning that toolbox. You know, it just melted away. But it kind of works for me there. You know, kind of. They're also fun to look at. You know, it's like a Christmas tree. They're also fun. You know, because you're stacking different things as you go up, or you come down, or you go to either left or right. You have different little stacks of ornaments, and I think that's where I began to drops the the caesures, the dashes and commas and periods and semicolons. Semicolons are probably impossible to use, but
I agree.
they're just too much, still too much. So when I read Tadeusz Rosewicz, the Polish post-war Holocaust poet, and he mentioned that he was that ornamentalism, like periods and dots and dashes and these funky little cool things that belong, quote unquote, in a poem, were not adequate. They were kind of imposters. And you're talking about such a terrible, horrific experience or state or moment or event or phantasmagoria. How could you dare ornamentalize it with your little dots?
Wow.
or dashes, right? So
Wow,
then I go, okay, I can see that. And then W.S. Merwin, who also flows, I enjoyed his kind of his Zen style. It's like meditations. Poems are more meditations. So with those two peoples, I said, all right, I'm gonna go that route. And then when I saw Stein's use of periods and all that stuff, and then you look at it backwards. For example, let's say you press on the period and then on the poem, and then you turn the page and you see the points of ink. They look like Morse codes. They look like shredded stars, and that was very interesting too.
Yeah.
So you can get stuck on these things.
Sure.
But I decided to bounce away. Yeah.
No, it works. It works so well for so many reasons. I wanted to ask you about the firefly. Each section invokes the firefly, and just a mention of a firefly for me evokes so much imagery and infers so many things. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the symbolism of the firefly and its significance for this particular collection.
The firefly. There was the firefly. Sometimes these things just come at you, And I was looking at the book and I said, something's missing in here. And it just goes on and on and on, and there's no moments there's no pauses in the book. It just keeps on rambling through. And I said, what's missing here? What is it? And then I thought of my mother's tiny address book from the 50s, and she bought it at Woolworths or Crest, one of those 5 and dime stores, and she didn't use it for addresses. I think she has one address in there. My sister's address, and she used that as a diary, and they were deep moments that she wrote in there that I had never really read. I had never read them.
Wow.
About her, how she was stuck without any money, and I was newly born, and she was just so upset that there was nothing she could do about it at that particular day. And she scribbled it on the address book. Of course, that's a very personal piece of words that she put in there. Very personal moment for her, and very big and painful. So I just noticed that, and I go, oh, okay. And then I was very concerned with the the migrant suffering trail from Honduras, from wherever you want to say in Latin America, and particularly Central America too, the borderland, U.S. Mexico, U.S. And those treks I felt them as pilgrimages, and of course treks, a migration trail, or here we go and we're going to do it, but also as pilgrimages. And in the pilgrimage, you make stops. And in those stops, there's little shrines that you either create and leave, or there's one that someone has created and left that's ahead of you, or that's been there years before you. So you stop there. You stop there and you rest or you honor the fact that it's a shrine by someone that passed through there, giving you more momentum, or just to note that that person or that group stopped there and their presence is there. And sometimes there's feathers or twigs or photos or little saints and water, little tacitas, little cups of water. So I remember that too. And we see those on the streets as well when someone dies or gets in an accident, dies, crosses and flowers. So those are very important things that we do. So I said, okay. So then it became an address book with meditations and as markers for the trail north. That's how I felt it, and that's how I wrote it.
Ooh, beautiful. Wow.
Just
wow.
the address
I love that.
book.
No, I love that. So many of these poems, and also this is just your work in general, but your body of work, but so many of these poems in this book, they seem to cast a spotlight on those who remain as invisible to so many people through erasure and discrimination and dehumanization, people who remain unseen and perhaps even more so unheard by so many people that are living in this country. And I think about the breathtaking poem, You Just Don't Talk About It, which even how it's formally constructed, this is how it felt to me. It feels like a dam breaking open. Every time I read it, it feels like a dam, even the way it's constructed, like a dam breaking open and then it's somehow closed at the end, when we realize that this is the unacknowledged harm that props up so much of what's seen as normal, the racist and xenophobic status quo in America. And I'm just wondering, how do you construct a poem that's able to carry so many stories? And it also seems to, and it does it. It feels earned, all these stories, that for me it seemed to wield like overwhelming the reader as a tool to galvanize. This is obviously me reading my own intention into this, which could be completely wrong, but every time I finish that poem in particular, I feel incited, I feel electrified in a constructive and actionable way by your poem. Is that by design? Is that your hope? I don't even know what my question is. I guess I'm just wondering, like, I'm because I feel overwhelmed in a way where, like, I guess for me, there are poems, you read, and the excess makes the poem not work, or you feel so overwhelmed you don't know what to do with it, and even in your body you don't apprehend it in a way where it feels like it's moving you somewhere. With this poem, I feel like the way you stack these different layers and stories and little snippets, I feel overwhelmed, and I want to like throw the book down and like go into the street. I guess I'm wondering, tell me about that. Just talk to me about that as a tool.
Well, we all have trucks and trucks of pain that we're pushing or carrying, or we just notice all our lives. We notice suffering of our peoples that, and just peoples, and there comes a moment where it just breaks out of us, or we've been carrying it, and we know we've been carrying it, and comes a moment when you unlock yourself, or you crack open yourself, and or you have a machete or hatchet, and the wires, the wired fences in front of you, and you just get whatever you can, that hatchet, machete, whatever it is, and you just hit that fence. You just hit that fence and bust it down until the people can come through. It's that. That nonstop carving yourself out of prison. You just carving, and scratching, and carving with your hands, everything you have, until that prison wall just cracks open, and all these things are the forces within you, and behind you, and in front of you, and you're doing this to let people, or to help people break through. And that's the feeling. See, that's the feeling, and hopefully hopefully it's all going to come together. You don't know, because you're just burning forward, and you don't know. And if you start to know, then it stops right there. It's going to stop right there. So you have to just, of course, you're looking at the words go by, but you're not really looking at them, because you're still burning them through. You're burning them through your hands, and until you get to that point where you go, okay, I think I broke through. I think I made it through. So now let's go forward. Yeah, it's like that. There really is no thinking going on, and there's no thinking going on, and there's no noticing and crafting. You just burn yourself through this steel wall, and you're doing it because
swinging the machete.
You're doing that because all the suffering you've seen, and the moment has come, and that's what you're working on. That's what you're doing. That's what we're doing. Of course, it's a piece of paper, and of course, it's little tiny letters, and you're in a big city, and but from within, this is the act.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Más o menos. Yeah.
Yeah. Juan Felipe, you use repetition so well in across many of your collections, but you use repetition so well in these poems. And as someone, myself who became a poet expecting to always read my work aloud or to hear it out loud, I grew up going to the Nuyorican Poets Cafe in New York, so very influenced by the Nuyorican tradition, even though I'm a New Colombian poet. I sometimes lament when more page-oriented poets are shy to repeat a word or a line when it feels, in my opinion, deeply necessary. I think a lot about the great orators and their use of repetition in speeches throughout history. So many times in this book, you force the reader to stay with an idea or image through repetition or anaphora. Like, you won't let them rush forward. There are times you push the reader forward, and there are times you stop them. You say, no, you will look at this. And I was wondering, and I love that. Did this emerge from, I guess, that tendency or that intuition or that permission? Did that emerge from reading your poems aloud, or was there a time before you recited your work publicly where you just instinctively did this?
You're right about the instinctively part. It's something that just you have to the free fall. It's free falling at all times, but not something that I began with.
I love that, free falling.
We're free falling. Otherwise, we're constructing, which is fine. It's fine too. No, at the beginning, I would I forced myself to get in the free speech area at UCLA. It's just because I knew I had to get up there. I had to get up there. Otherwise, I wasn't gonna survive. I wasn't going to be able to stand up and say anything. So I threw myself out in this free speech area, Kirkhoff Hall Plaza, I think. I was 18, 19 years old, and I started to do a poem, but because I wasn't even close to used to doing that, I would say I better just scream it out because I'm getting a little too nervous up here. My voice is beginning to sound like a seagull. I got a little seagull voice all of a sudden. and then I would scream myself out, and then I started sounding like Mickey Mouse because my voice then cracked, and when you scream, you're gonna mess yourself up. So then I started sounding like Mickey Mouse. So at first it wasn't even about getting getting the language going. It was about just getting my voice, the ability to get up and read before an audience. Even though I had worked on it for years and in choirs, I threw myself into choirs a fuerza. I forced myself to get into that choir so I could be called on and be put to shame. So I could be called on. So it took a while, and I really hadn't noticed the repetition, but because it's so musical and so rhythmic, it's that's like learning the conga and the bongos, and all of a sudden it's just a lot of fun. And if you have friends that play musical instruments and percussion, then you're really in the good feeling and the groove. And then then you get into music, rhythmic, conga, timbal, papaya groove. And then later you start adding more thoughtful, or not much, more thoughtful stuff, or more. You begin to focus more, and then you see the lines, and you notice the lines. At first, there's no lines. You just scribble and riff on the scribble, which is fun too, riffing on the scribble.
I wish I could be there and see you meet you at 19 at UCLA in the free speech area. I love that. I love the image. Juan Felipe, you mean so much to many across the globe, but I would argue in particular to me and to so many Latina, Latino, Latinx, Latina writers and readers. And I feel like we celebrate you for your generosity as a mentor, activist, and community member as much as for your prolific and singular gifts as a writer. And I'll just say this, I don't know, I mean, I do know some very generous, incredible mentors that I've had and literary citizens like I adore, and Patricia Smith and Willie Perdomo and a lot of great people out there. But I would say that is rare to see somebody who's celebrated as much, who's someone who's celebrated as much as you are for your writing, to be celebrated, it seems, equally for your generosity as a mentor. Like the International Book Award for Poetry is named in your honor, as it should be. And I know so many Latinx writers who name you as one of their defining influences. And I was just wondering, where did you learn to be such a generous and gracious literary citizen?
Well, I appreciate your good thoughts, but I hope I'm close to what you say. Well, it comes from my parents. If I actually succeed in being generous and kind, it comes from them. My father was born in 1882, and my mother in 1904. So they're from another world, a world of simplicity, a world of working hard, and that's it. Frijoles, arroz, tortillas, salsa, that was it. And Levi's with parches on them. O sea, todo parchado. So I learned from my mother and father the simplicity and kindness. I never, got yelled at. I never got what's the word? Grounded. But I did get the eye, el ojo, So when they give me a certain look, I was in mega trouble. I was in major trouble. But no screaming, no yelling, and no hitting, and just and like my mother's three precepts in a way. She goes, I want you to be respectful, I want you to attain happiness, and I want you to be kind. So if I could do those three things, my mother was happy. I didn't have to be a lawyer, a surgeon, or anything. It was just if I could do those three things, and I was happy. And she was always generous, always. One time, San Francisco in the mission, she got off the bus, and she had just an ordinary watch, and one of the kids just grabbed her wrist and ripped it off her wrist and started running. And then later, at the apartment, I said, so what happened? Where's your watch, Mom? No, he must have needed it more than me.
Wow.
So that was my mom. Wow. And así siempre, always giving. Te hago otra quesadilla. My friend would come to her apartment with me, little tiny apartment. No, señora, ya. No, here, ándale otra quesadilla. Okay, like a 10th quesadilla. So she would feed all my friends and anybody on the street and give everything away. I said, what's all that furniture? So Margarita just left the furniture at your house for a while. Oh, la vendió. Well, how much? por $10, $10. Who's that lady living in the other room here? Oh, es una amiga. She needs a place to stay. Oh, God.
Wow.
So era mi mamá and mi papá. Very simple life, very kind life, and hard, super hard workers forever.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Juan, Felipe, I was joking with Julia beforehand that I had 3 hours of questions, and I think I've already stayed too long with you. But I just have one more question, and before I ask it, I'll just say I hope to see you in California or somewhere else, and and meet you in person someday soon. I admire you and your work so much. This has been so special and such an honor. The last question I wanted to ask, and everyone listening, you have to buy Every Day We Get More Legal and every single book that Juan Felipe has published. If you don't own them already, you should buy them immediately. For this last question, I wanted to ask you this. You closed the collection with this incredible quote from the Dalai Lama, and I noticed, I've encountered so many poetry collections that open with a quote. I'd say most poetry collections, it seems these days, open with a quote. But I don't know if I've ever seen a collection closed with a quote. I was trying to think about this. I was like, have I ever seen it? I feel fairly certain. It must have happened again, but I can't think of one. And I've read a lot of poetry collections, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the significance of this quote, what it means to you, and how you came to this decision to close the book with it.
Yes, it says we must develop a sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings by the Dalai Lama. And I think that kind of says it all. We all know how divided we've become, how much violence there is, how much fighting there is, and massacres. I mean, it's just, a river of guns and blood. And I think to see each other as brothers and sisters, regardless of regardless of who we say we are, or how we're seen, or how we see each other, I think that's the goal. To embrace everyone, every culture, every gender, each other, every nation or an island, every mountain, everyone. That's the goal. That's the goal.
Absolutely.
I mean, imagine
Absolutely.
what kind of world this would be.
Yeah.
This would be. We would have it. We would enjoy all of it. And there wouldn't be any wars and massacres and shootings and stabbings and one group, driving over the other group. So to me, it says it all, and that's what this book. That's one of the principles. That's the core principle of this book.
Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And Juan Felipe, it makes me think of that of you talking about your mother and your parents in their old neighborhood. Margarita needs the dresser, and whoever needs an extra something for dinner. It's almost like you projecting this idea of the world becoming that neighborhood, becoming that selfless and that connected and that much of a village where everyone shares and takes care of each other. That's so beautiful.
That's it.
I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to talk with you, and hopefully next time I see you, we have a drink in our hand, and we can share some food.
Hey, let's do that. I thank you, Carlos, for your good-hearted self and work and questions and who you are. Te lo aprecio mucho. Te aprecio mucho a ti. Gracias.
All right, igualmente. Gracias.
Thank you, compadre.
Yeah.
Comadre Karen.
Thank you, comadre.
Okay, bravo, Comadre Julia, compadres John, Juan Felipe, and Carlos Andres. We are so grateful for the insightful interview and for spending time with us this evening. We enjoyed the sharing of perspectives and insights from your work and your life. We treasured the opportunity to learn about you, and we feel more connected to you. Once again, we thank Arte Publico Press and City Lights Books for their support of this teleconference and for their generous gifts of books for winners of early registration. We thank our audience for taking the time to join us for this teleconference, and Thank you for those that submitted questions. And we'd like to thank Comadre Maria Ferrar for the media coordination and the Twitter chat, and to Comadre Dora Abreu for the web work she does for us. Without this volunteer leadership team, this book club and all the associated work would not happen. Mil gracias. Please remember to support our authors by writing a review of their books on sites like Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, etc. Those reviews carry weight with the publishers as well as other readers. Buy books to support our authors, and if your library does not have a book you want to read, ask them to order it. And please attend your virtual local book club meetings and bring a friend or two. Remember, it's open to everyone, men and women, and not just Latinos. For July, we will be featuring books by two comadres. Our book of the month is America's Dream by Esmeralda Santiago. This is the 25th anniversary of this work, and we can't wait to read it with new eyes. Our additional conversations with selection is Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. Our teleconference for July will be held on Monday, July 26, 2021. Once again, we are keeping you all in our thoughts and prayers through these times. Thank you for your continued support of our book club and Latino literature. Mil gracias to all. Stay safe and wear your mask. Buenas noches.
Thank you, comadres.
Buenas noches.
Buenas
Thank
noches.
you.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches, Carlos, everybody.
Buenas noches.
Gracias, Juan Felipe.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.